Hello again from Speed Zone. Today we're going to talk about two simple mods that picked up 49 wheel horsepower on a 2009 GTR that was already pretty well tuned with stock turbos. This car started life as a Hennessy GTR 600. It came from Hennessy with downpipes, 3.5-inch mid pipe, some engine management, some different intake piping, different blow-off valves, and it was 522 wheel horsepower at that time. When I got the car, I took it up to Surgeline in Portland. We increased the injector size to 950 just in case we want to run ethanol in the future, dual fuel pumps, and then a retune, and we got it up to 536 wheel horsepower. At that point, the car was running well, but we're always searching for more power. The one problem that I saw with the Hennessy mid pipe was that they had mated it up to the stock rear section of the exhaust, and the exhaust was good from the factory, but it's 2 3/4 inch. So they made it up a 3.5-inch downpipe to a 2 3/4 inch rear section. To me, that equaled a massive bottleneck and terrible for any type of power development. So I knew that something had to be done. Now I could have gone and got a new rear exhaust. I think T1R makes about the least expensive one that's decent, and it's I think $2,000, maybe a little more than $2,000, and the prices just go up from there. I like the way the GTR exhaust sounded. But again, this bottleneck wasn't going to work. So I figured, well, why not just remove the bottleneck? So that's what I did. I took the section of pipe from the connector, which I had to grind out to 3.5-inch to mate up with the mid pipe. So that was the first thing. I took the connector flange, ground it out to 3.5 inches, and then I bought some 3.5-inch. They call it universal exhaust tubing. It's pre-bent. It has all different angles when you get it. And then I bought a cut-off saw at Harbor Freight, got some decent blades for it, and started the project. Once the flange was 3.5 inches, I just started adding pipe at the right angle. I'd figure out the angle, make a cut, do a tack weld, and then started building this section all the way back. Now, in the rear section, the stock exhaust splits into two pipes that are 2.4 inches in diameter. So that's plenty of room to accept the 3.5-inch pipe into that section. So where it flares back into the two pipes, it's kind of an oval section. I figured out where the diameter of that is 3.5 inches. I got my my cutoff saw. I sliced it at that point, at where it was 3.5 inches, and then fabricated a flange or a piece of pipe that was elongated to mate up with the stock exhaust, and welded it all up. And so that was the rear section, and then all the rest of the sections together. And it was a pretty simple project. I mean, I'm not a certified welder, but with a little time and patience, it turned out better than I hoped. And now it's all 3.5-inch all the way back to where it splits. So there's no more bottleneck. So that was one problem that was corrected, and that was probably good for probably the majority of that 49 wheel horsepower. The other addition was the AQ Motorsports cold air intakes. Very nicely manufactured, a beautiful system. There were a couple of problems I ran into along the way, and we'll go up front and I'll show you that. Let's see if we can't zoom in on the dyno charts too and get close enough where you can actually see them. This was the final tune. This is with the AQ Motorsports cold air intakes, and then my equalizer pipe, we'll call it, the rear section of exhaust. So now we're up to 585 wheel horsepower, 567 foot-pounds of torque. Before that, we were at 536 wheel horsepower and 522 foot-pounds of torque. So that's a 49 horsepower increase and 45 foot-pounds of torque increase, and out of those two modifications. So I was really happy with that because, again, the car was pretty well tuned as it was, and so any increases are harder to come by once you start getting up there in the horsepower range. Peter at AQ Motorsports was real easy to work with. They're a good outfit. They stand behind their product. He was there to help me with the few problems that I did have, and everything worked out well. So I highly recommend their intakes. They're made beautifully, and they definitely work. All right, so the first problem that I ran into with the intakes was that when Peter and his group designed these, they designed them to hook up to the factory bellows connector. The turbo inlet connector from the factory is like a bellows system, so it's flexible. So they were able to flex that bellows into their 3-inch pipe. Well, I had a straight connector on there from Cobb Tuning, and the straight connector does not flex at all, and there was no way it was going to mate up with this. Now the Cobb connectors fit perfectly with the stock air boxes, so it wasn't that there was some weird connector on there that wasn't supposed to be there. They worked with the factory air boxes, but AQ had never run into that problem because obviously nobody that bought their stuff ever had a straight connector on there. So I called Peter. He said there's a shop right down the street from where he was that made the 45-degree angle reducer connectors, which is what I needed for this application. He sent it right off to me, and I cut it down to size, and that took care of the problem. So with a 45-degree angle reducer connector, then the AQ Motorsports intakes fit perfectly. The other thing that you'll have to deal with is to get the K&N intakes on, air filters. You have to remove the nose of this car to get them in. They're pretty huge, and the only way they're going in is if you take the nose off. The good news is the nose is very easy to take off. The other problem I ran into, and it probably had to do with the connectors that were used or had to be fabricated, was that the K&Ns would not fit in far enough because they have a long neck on them. Halfway down the neck is a ridge that mates right up with that 3-inch pipe. So once you hit that ridge, everything stops. And where it stopped, the filter was too far forward. So if you were to try to put the nose on and had it fit like that, you get a dimple in your nose from the end of the filter. So the remedy to that was I took a Dremel tool, I sanded down that ridge and blended it in to the rest of the neck, and then I was able to push the K&Ns all the way on. So the key is there's a plastic superstructure here in the front of the car that goes all the way across. The base of this K&N has to fit up against this plastic superstructure. If you have it fitted against that, you're in good shape, and there won't be any contact with the inside of the nose. So when you're installing these, just make sure that this K&N is all the way up against this plastic superstructure, and you won't have a fitment issue with the front of the nose. The other thing that you have to be prepared for is when you put these intakes on, the car will have to be retuned. Because it doesn't understand the new airflow parameters. And it'll almost immediately go into limp mode. It will let you drive the car to the tuner, provided you don't go over 67 miles an hour. If you do that, the car starts shaking and the clutches engage and disengage, and it's telling you, hey, I don't want to go this fast. But you can go 65 miles an hour. The turbos won't spool up. Everything is like in slow mode, but it will get you to the tuner. And then from that point on, once everything is retuned, you can expect some nice increases. So recapping the exhaust section that I made was inexpensive. Like I said, $120 for the pipe, and then a little bit of labor involved, but nothing that anybody shouldn't be able to do. The intakes were relatively simple to install. Again, if you have straight connectors, you're going to have to get a 45-degree elbow reducer. Make sure you get that with the kit when you order it, and make sure these K&Ns are all the way up against the superstructure, and you should be good to go. So that's it. We're always looking for more horsepower. I picked up 49 at the wheels with these two simple mods, and it was well worth it. So just wanted to share that information with all the rest of you horsepower freaks out there. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again. Bye.